Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Good.
When you look at the Chiefs, and obviously the big question is Patrick Mahomes' status, it seems like he's going to be okay, but who knows? How does that impact your preparation this week?
Well, it makes a difference. I mean, he's a reigning MVP. I mean, he's a special quarterback who can do everything. Pocket passer, mobile quarterback that can get out of the pocket and make plays. So it definitely affect our preparation. They are a very good football team. For sure. Patrick Mahomes, he's a special talent.
When you look back at that week 6 loss, just how much has this defense evolved since then?
Yeah, I think Heather, if you just take a look at the numbers, and we had this conversation before over those last 10 games of the regular season, you can see how much our defense steadily improved along the way. And we did some particular things, but our players have really bought into the fact that we want to just continue to improve throughout the second half of the season and really be playing our best football in November and December. And that was beginning to happen and it has continued. So a lot has changed since that week 6 loss to the Chiefs.
And one more for me, when you look at this coaching matchup, everybody talks about Andy Reid and Sean McDermott, but for you, take me back to 1999 and early 2000s when you were with the Eagles, because at one time for a couple years, it was Andy Reid, Sean McDermott, you, and Steve Spagnuolo. I guess just what jumps out about being on that coaching staff and having all four of you there? Yeah, I guess just what stands out about that time and being with those guys.
Well, it was a special time. I mean, there were so many guys that were on that staff and it put together a terrific staff. When you look at what some of the guys have done that were part of his original staff, and we had one of those a week ago in Harbaugh. I don't want to get him, but it was a special time to be around those guys and get to know each other. And we kept those strong ties all these many years, from 1999 to now, where there's a brotherhood amongst us that goes beyond just the football. And that's because of the way we all started in this league on Andy's first staff. And just a lot of respect for Steve and Eric Danny, who was one of our players at the time when we were with the Eagles. And there's some other guys on there, Greg Lewis, a bunch of other guys as well. So there are a lot of ties on that Kansas City staff to guys here in Buffalo.
Thanks, Leslie. Appreciate it.
Well,
Hey Leslie, how are you?
hey, what's say, Matt?
Um, you know, you guys had quite a performance defensively against the Ravens, and we were talking about last week the challenges that Lamar presented, and as the week progressed, it seemed, and Matt Milano, we got to talk to him on the last day of media, and he said, simply put, we're confident in our ability to limit him, and that's exactly what you guys did for 3 quarters before he unfortunately left the game. How impressed were you with the way the players executed it, and what went into that plan, and why everybody seemed so confident?
Yeah, I mean, credit to our players, Matt. They did a terrific job all week long in our preparation. It's such a unique offense, one that you really don't see very often in our league. And it requires a lot of studying. You have to do things a little bit different because you got to change some rules from the way you operated in previous weeks. And you really need the players to do some things on their own because we can't get it all done when we're here in Orchard Park. Sometimes when they're at home, they've got to be going through their notes and studying and preparing, and then come back the next day a little bit better than they were the day before. And they did that. I mean, they did a great job of preparing, which allowed them to go out and execute in the ball game. So hats off to our guys for doing the things that were necessary to prepare for a very, very tough offense, very good offense.
And moving towards next weekend's matchup, and I know there's some uncertainty with Patrick, but if he is the guy and he's ready to go, I mean, what's different? What's challenging about preparing for him? What do you guys have to do well specifically to limit him?
Well, it's probably what everybody talks about, but it's hard to do. And that's, keep him in the pocket. Don't let him scramble around and make plays. Try to confuse him, try to make it hard for him. And if he gives you opportunities to make plays on the ball, make those plays. And, you got to do a good job in the run game and try to make him one dimensional as much as, people talk about how good he is throwing the ball. You really don't want them to be a balanced offense and try to make them be one dimensional. And if you can, then your defensive line and your secondary has to step up and make some plays, and that's what we're counting on.
Thanks, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Hi, Leslie. It's Jay with the Buffalo News. I'm asking you to go back in your memory bank here a little bit, but in 2017, your first year here with Sean, you guys went into Kansas City and won a game to stop a 3-game losing streak that was pretty bad. You guys had gotten beaten really, really soundly 3 weeks in a row. Just do you have any recollections of going in and winning that game? And did it maybe change or alter the way that you think of Sean as a head coach, that he was able to keep that team together at that point, because you really rescued that season? And, you know, did you think that that was a pretty significant moment in his career?
You know, reflecting back, you know, I thought about it this morning when I woke up, actually, when I was thinking about the fact that we were going to Kansas City the last time we were there, the significance of that game. And in respect to Sean, you know, always felt like he was handling the situation extremely well. Those were some tough losses, as you mentioned, that 3-week span, but he was keeping the team together and really, you know, just pointing out where we were and what the end goal was. And fortunate for us, the guys that were on the team at that time, the leaders that we had, Eric Woods, Lorenzo, Kyle, the different guys, they were carrying Sean's message back to the locker room. He was steady, and we just kept fighting, and we got to Kansas City. They were a good team even then. I think they were for sure a playoff team. And because our guys still believed, and because of Sean's leadership, we went there, you know, not feeling down about what had happened the previous 3 weeks. We had learned from those mistakes and wanted to go get a win. And I think some of that can be traced back to Andy Reid as well. I think Sean would attest to that. And, one of the things that we remember most, and he and I talked about this, is how well Andy handled losses. And I think that's helped Sean here in Buffalo. We've had some tough losses along the way, but you have to be able to flush those and get ready for the next game in our league. And Andy was the best at modeling that. I can remember a game in Derek Borco. We were talking about it one year. We opened with Tennessee. We got crushed. I mean, embarrassed. We come back in Monday, and you know, everybody's expecting Andy to be yelling and screaming and going off about the loss. We move on from that, and you know, we end up winning our division that year and, you know, playing in the NFC Championship game. But you know, we all learned a lot about dealing with adversity from Andy, and Sean has done a terrific job of doing that here in Buffalo.
And in that game, Tre'Davious had a late interception that helped seal the win. Not the first big play, but certainly one of them, and he's made a heck of a lot of them since for you guys. How have you seen him develop as a corner? I thought last week he played a really well-rounded game in terms of his run support. Has it impressed you how he has grown year over year in that role as your number one cornerback? Oh,
no doubt, Jay. I mean, from early in his career, to see the maturation, and we put a lot on him as a rookie. You know, we had him matching up as a rookie with the top wide receivers, and that was because of, you know, what we saw in practice and the way he prepared in meetings. And now the way he tackles, that's what makes him a complete corner. Because a lot of guys that are good cover guys, they take it with pride that they don't tackle, and you know, that to me is not a well-rounded corner. And Tre'Davious has a lot of pride. He wants to be a well-rounded corner, not just be known as a cover guy. So to see his growth and improvement over the years, where he hasn't been stagnant, he's worked as hard as he can to improve. I mean, it's impressive. You know, he's a guy that we know we can hang our hat on every single game, and you need that at that position. And so he's been really special for us.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening, Coach Frazier. George Radney, Challenger Community News. Hope all is well.
Thank you, George. Going well.
Yes, indeed. Do you think that the play of your defense this past Saturday night was its best so far this season, where it seems like everything, the edge rushers, everybody was doing their job, and the tackling was on par? Do you think it was maybe their best output so far?
Well, in the context of the meaningfulness of the game, maybe so, because you know, you don't win that game, your season's over. We've had some other good games this year. I don't think we've held anyone to 3 points in a ball game. I can't recall if we did that this season. But in the context of what that game meant, I would have to say yes. And each game is going to get bigger as we go forward. But to go out and hold an NFL team in the playoffs to 3 points, that's pretty impressive, especially an offense that's so unique like that and can be explosive from anywhere on the field with such a dynamic quarterback. Yes, that was a really good performance by our guys.
And do you think your secondary seems to be really on top of their game, especially Poyer and Hyde on the back end? It seems like the Bills always, since you guys have been here, the Bills have always been very competitive against Kansas City, especially at Arrowhead. Is that because of your back end of the defense?
Well, what helps our back end is what we do up front. When the guys up front are really humming, George, it really helps our secondary. We're fortunate to have two of the best safeties in the National Football League, in Jordan and Micah. They do a terrific job for us, really minimizing people getting explosive passes over our defense. I know we've been at the top of the league for the last 3 or 4 years and not giving up 40 plus, passes. And it's because of what they do. So we're fortunate to have two very smart players who are good tacklers, but they also understand how the game unfolds and how important it is not to give up the explosives when you're safe. So, but our defensive line is what helps our secondary for sure.
All right. Thank you very much and have a great week.
Thank you, George.
Hey, Leslie, it's Kim Jones. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Kim. Yes.
Good to see you. And I thank George because he actually asked one of my questions. So I can focus on one for you. How's that?
All right. Sounds good.
I'm a believer in moments in games can say a lot about the players involved. And I'm wondering if with Taron Johnson, but also with Tre'Davious running interference like a great wingman, I'm wondering what your take is on each of those individually, if you would, please.
We talk about it. It's very astute of you to be aware of that situation because some people would overlook Tre'Davious' part in that touchdown. But it's something that we talk about. It's something that we work on in practice, being able to, whether it's a scoop and score or in this case an interception, but setting up a wall along the numbers and the near numbers and making sure guys don't block below the waist or block behind the ball carrier, but run interference for the guy who has gotten that takeaway. And the way Tre'Davious handled it was just beautiful. It's everything that we talk about and teach. And that's, man, this is clinic. This is what you want to be able to show to the players. This is what we're talking about. This is what we practice. And there you see it in action, and it leads to one of the biggest plays, of our season. So it's great to see.
And Leslie, if I may, sorry, I'm breaking my own rule, but I interviewed both of them after the game, and I was struck. Tre'Davious was intent on Johnson getting the credit. He literally physically took a step back. And then after Taron spoke to me, through the microphone, Trey stepped in. He knew I still needed more from a veteran player. I just think, Leslie, that stuff is wonderful. It's easy to overlook, but I think it means something for successful teams.
I totally agree. And when you talk about chemistry and makeup of a team, Kim, that's the part that can get lost when you're trying to win a championship or you're trying to bring a team together. Guys that aren't overly concerned about who gets the credit, man, when you can be egoless and really think more about the team or my teammate, you have a chance. You have a chance to be very, very successful. And the locker room a lot more cohesive. When guys aren't always looking to pound their chest and say, why aren't you writing an article about me? Why isn't the camera on me? Credit to our guys. And for Tre'Davious as a veteran who a lot of times is in the limelight, to defer to Taron speaks a lot about him, but also a bunch of our other guys as well.
Thank you.
Hey, Leslie, it's John. Good evening. Hope you're doing well.
Well done.
The first time you played these guys earlier, obviously the running game for them was what really stood out. How much of that was game plan? Because you would rather go against the run than have Patrick beat you deep. And how much was it certainly you didn't want to give up 200 plus rushing yards and just a failed, whether it was assignments or just a mistake of execution?
Yeah, we went into it with that mindset you just mentioned. We went into it saying, okay, they're not going to beat us over the top. They were hitting so many explosives, and they're still doing it to teams. And we just weren't going to give up the explosive passes, and that's the way we played. And we said, okay, we're going to dare them to stay with the run game. And lo and behold, they stayed with it and had a lot of success running the football. So We learned a lot from that ball game, and hopefully some lessons that will help us going forward. But that was the strategy going into that game, and we'll have to find a balance to do a better job against the run than we did in that first encounter.
What is the thing what is it that you learned about that performance? Obviously, understanding you have to put so much emphasis on the back end. So what did you learn, even if the game plan is not the same, but how to better execute?
Yeah, let me see how I can say this as Andy Reid is listening to this press conference. What do I want to give away? We learned some things about our defense and their offense that we want to improve on for this next ball game for sure. But we're going to strategize and just do some things a little bit better than we did the first encounter.
Was not trying to get you to spill the beans there. I apologize. And then just quickly, obviously Travis Kelce is arguably the best pass catcher in general in football, not named Stephon Diggs. So, I mean, how do you balance going against him, understanding that you have Matt out there this time, and just the different ways that you try to, I guess, slow him down and probably not completely shut him down?
Yeah, I mean, he's arguably the best tight end in our game, and he can do so many things so well, and they move him around so much. I mean, they put him at the number 1 position, they put him at 2, they put him at 3. Sometimes he's in the backfield. I mean, he just creates a lot of problems for your defense, and we're fortunate to have Matt back. That's going to make a difference for us, we believe, and that should help us. But nobody really shuts down Travis, as you mentioned. They do so many things to uncover him, and we just got to work as hard as we can to try to contain him and not let him wreck the game with some of his plays underneath in zones and being able to top our defense as well. So if we can contain him and control him to a degree, that will give us a better chance to succeed as a defense.
Thanks, Leslie.
You're welcome, Jim.
Hey, Leslie, first of all, I know you're good at this coaching thing, but I think you should go into politics after that answer you gave John there, how you did that. All right. So maybe the next career lined up for you. Good job. I want to ask you about Taron, 2018 draft, the combine. There's this viral video going on where he gets hit in the head, with the ball. Here's a guy that comes in, he was a starter right away, but he had injuries. And then he loses his starting job earlier this year. He bounces back. First of all, what do you remember about your evaluation of him in his makeup when he was coming out in 2018, and now where he is and how he's progressed throughout his career?
Yeah, I remember watching him Sal in the All-Star games and when he was coming out of college, and just seeing how competitive he was. I think we were in the one-on-one drills, maybe at the Senior Bowl, and he was just competing on every single snap. Like, it was a game situation. And, we're always looking for that competitive guy to help us in the secondary for sure. But competitive guys they fit our DNA. And so that kind of struck me. And then when we had a chance to talk with him and visit with him, you can see that eagerness, that passion he has for the game, and that desire to be the best. They were playing him at corner at the time, and we were, projecting him as a slot guy. And so we had to go through in our minds how he would look in that role and what it would be like. Because in that position, you count on the guy to have good instincts. And sometimes that slot corner, he's got a lot of space to cover. So the transition from the corner, where you have a sideline to work with, and the slot is not as easy of a transition as some would think. So we were doing our projections and talking through things. And the more we all watched tape, the more we felt like he would be a good fit. And when he arrived, to see how competitive he was in person, once we started coaching him, you just knew that he had the instincts and the wherewithal to continue to improve. The problem was for him just being injured all the time. He'd be in the lineup, then out of the lineup, and so he wasn't able to get that continuity that we wanted with him. And then this season, with the offseason being like it was and training camp being like it was, he needed a training camp. He needed an offseason, didn't get it. Started slow for us, struggling early on. We made a change. To his credit, didn't get over there and sulk, didn't pout. When he got back in the lineup, his game just really took off, and he's become the player that he is now. So through all of that, the one common denominator was the passion and the heart that he has, and that's one of the reasons he's making the plays he's making now.
Leslie, in the offseason, Jim Salgado was hired as a nickel coach. It was kind of like a new position created, right? I mean, Well, can you kind of give us some insight on what he's been able to do to help Taron and the other guys? But I don't think we have never mentioned that enough this year about that being a specific position that you guys didn't have before for the nickel coach.
Yeah. I'm glad you made that point, Sal, because Jimmy has done a great job in working with our nickels. That includes Saran, Dean when he's played that position for us, and obviously what Taron is doing. And so having someone specifically working with that position, and it's really a credit to Sean to make that decision and make Jimmy full-time at that position because it's needed. That guy's virtually a starter for us because you're playing 70+% of our game. So to have someone who concentrates on your videotape and talks to you about your technique and then do drills specifically for your play set, it makes a big difference. And I think that's had a lot to do with Taron's improvement, along with Dean when he's got in ball games, and Saran as well. So Jimmy deserves a lot of credit.
All right, Coach, thanks. And let me know when you're running for office.
All right, thanks.
Coach Frazier, Mookie Hawk as well, Full Sports 1080. How you doing today, sir?
Let's say, Mookie, how are you?
I'm doing great. Now, throughout your great coaching career, what does this Chief team, what team that you ever faced throughout your career, do the Chief remind you of?
When I watch them sometimes, I do think about the Air Coryell days when the Chargers were with Dan Fouts at the helm, just lighting people up. That scoreboard was just continually going up. It was hard for defenses to defend that offense when they were really hitting their stride. And at times, when I'm watching the Chiefs, I think about them. They've got so many weapons, much like those Chargers did under Don Coryell. It's a challenge for any defense. And they've got weapons everywhere in the backfield, a tight end, a wide receiver, and probably a future Hall of Fame quarterback. And they can score in a hurry. So that's probably the offense they remind me of at times.
Absolutely, sir. And it is MLK Day, and you was born in a segregated time. So how great is it to see Dr. King legacy still live on, Coach?
I mean, because it means a lot, not just for minority races, but for all of us. It's, what Dr. King stood for, human rights, civil rights, just to warms your heart that our country would set aside a day to honor his memory because of the impact that he had on so many. So very thankful to be in the United States of America, to be a citizen, and to be able to observe what is such a special day for a special human being.
Absolutely, Coach. And I know you'll go out there in 85 Bears, the Chiefs. Good luck this Sunday.
Thank you.
Hey, Leslie, Mike Giardi, NFL Network. How are you?
Hey, Mike. Doing good.
A question for you about Jerry Hughes. I think his last three playoff games for you guys, 5 sacks. What's allowed him to sort of elevate in these big moments and make plays, obviously, when you need him the most?
I'm glad you brought up Jerry because he had a game ball worthy performance. He did a terrific job for us on in our playoff game against the Ravens. One of those games that was a signature game. And like you mentioned, just when we needed it. I mean, that quarterback is so elusive, and that offensive line, those are some big guys that we had to be able to get around. And Jerry has been steady for us throughout the season. Probably hasn't had the impact weekly that he would have liked, but he's always been consistent for us. And so to finally see him begin to get some of the credit here in these playoffs because of his play is really good for him, but it's good for us as well. And we expect him just to continue on. I don't know if I can point to one thing, Mike, that is the reason for those numbers stepping up, other than maybe the quarterback holding the ball a little bit longer than they did in the regular season. But he's been consistently putting pressure on quarterbacks and making a difference for us as a defensive end.
And what does it say to you too, Leslie, about May? You said maybe he's not putting up the numbers that he would like on a week-to-week basis, but his ability to be out there consistently and to continue to give you that effort, I guess would speak maybe to his maturity as a player here.
Yeah, along with that, Mike, his leadership combined with the fact that he's out there every week and the way he practices. I mean, he's been disruptive throughout our season. It's just that the numbers haven't matched that. I think back to the Jets game, our second Jets game, the impact he had in that ball game. I mean, really changed that game for our team and our defense as well. And he's had moments like those, but sometimes at the defensive end position or defensive line position, the hurries they don't create the splash that a sack will. But those hurries, those getting the quarterback off his spot, I mean, those are impact plays for our defense, and Jerry's been doing that throughout the season.
Thanks, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Leslie, John Morrow, AP. Congrats on the stellar effort on Saturday. And I guess this segues into the first question that I had is, with all the attention focused on the quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, why is it always that the defenses seem to take the second fiddle come this time of year? Maybe all the time.
Yeah. Well, we have a saying, John, and you've heard it, I'm sure, that offense wins games, defense wins championships. And I'm a firm believer in that. I was on a special defense as a player, and we had a really good offense, a Hall of Fame running back. But our defense needed to step up in the playoffs in order for us to get to where we wanted to go. And when I was on another Super Bowl team as a coach in Indianapolis, Hall of Fame quarterback, really good offense, but our defense really needed to step up in order for us to get that ring in Indianapolis. And it's the same way now. Your defense, as much as the game has evolved and it's more offensive centric, for sure. I mean, the points were up this season for a lot of different reasons, but you need your defense this time of the year, especially when you get into some of these weather games like we had on Saturday night. You need your defense to step up. And to answer your question, why does the offense continue to get all the credit? I mean, I understand it. People love points. I know we'd be happy to win the game. 3-0, we'd be very, very happy to do that.
And the other question is, how much do you value the time that you've had? I know you interviewed with the Texans. That I believe that was yesterday. But how much do you value the time that you've had in being a sounding board to Sean McDermott in the 4 years that you've been together? Not saying that you're leaving, but just the thoughts on that relationship that you've redeveloped after working with him back in the 2000s.
John, it's been an honor just to stand alongside Sean, and we've had some really good conversations, sometimes some challenging conversations, and even in the interview process yesterday, just talking about that piece when we first arrived and we sat down and we started talking about what the staff should look like, what the team should look like, and I was sharing with him how much I wanted to make sure that some of the mistakes that I made as a first-time head coach that he didn't make. I wanted to be that sounding board, to be that support system, to do everything I could to ensure that Sean was a successful head coach and to use my experience to be able to do that. Now, you have to be an egoless guy in Sean's shoes to take some of that conversation and not feel threatened when you're having those conversations. So I just appreciate his willingness to allow me to share my thoughts and then to listen and give feedback. And then I have to be able to not be prideful if he says, no, I want to do it this way or that way, and let it go, because at the end of the day, these have to be his decisions. But I'm so thankful that I work with a guy that we can have that type of dialogue and come to a conclusion that's best for our team, and someone who's willing to utilize my experience. And that's not always the case. I mean, it's a business with a lot of egos, a lot of people that get concerned about who gets the credit. And I'm very fortunate. I treasure this time that I've had to work with Sean, no matter what happens, whether I'm here next year or whatever. Very, very thankful for the time I've had here working with him.
Sounds like you've learned something too.
No doubt about it. Learned a lot being around him and just seeing how he's handled our team. Jay asked earlier about that 3-game losing streak. That was, it was hard, but just seeing how he handled that situation, how we came out of it and ended up being a playoff team. I mean, for Sean to lead during that time, because you learn a lot about a person when you go through adversity. When you're on the top of the mountain, everything's hunky-dory, everybody's patting you on the back. But in those moments, to see how Sean handled that, how he dealt with our players, yes, I've learned a lot just being around him as well.
Thanks so much, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Hey, Coach Frazier, congrats on making the AFC Championship game.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep, my name's Therese Paylor. I'm with Yahoo Sports. And my question for you is this. I know both these quarterbacks have been unbelievable against the blitz this year. And obviously a big part of that is how talented they are, right? But you've been around this league a long time, Coach. So I was hoping I could tap into that knowledge because it feels like, is there any reason about the way the game is played now that makes it easier for quarterbacks to rip up the blitz? Like, again, they're very talented. Not everyone can do it. But it feels like back in the day, blitzing was a pretty successful universal strategy. Now, there's some guys you kind of just better not do it against, right? Just what are your thoughts on that? And if you disagree with it too, it's a theory I'm throwing at you.
Yeah, I think some of it has to do with the skill level of the quarterbacks today across the board, and maybe even the blitz packages that they see in college, or which are sometimes very similar to what they see in the NFL, because it really is a copycat league in so many ways, with college teams now having videotape of NFL teams at their thumbprint. I mean, that's right there for them as well. So a lot of what we do at our level, they're seeing sometimes at the collegiate level. And so when they get up here, it's not quite the surprise that it once was. But I think as much as anything, it's the skill level of the quarterbacks across the board, along with some really good coaching going on, and how offenses now deploy their skill. Much more intent on creating mismatches as an offense than, say, many years ago, when things were more run first, come up with a pass, run again, then another pass. Now it's so much pass first and spread you out, find a mismatch, and that allows quarterbacks to identify and see where the pressure's coming from because of how spread out you are. So they've simplified things for the quarterback, and some of it is by formation, allowing them to be able to see where the pressure might be coming from and really schooling them up. And some good coaching going on with some very good athletes at quarterback.
And I guess my last question will be, it feels like one of the reasons Josh is so great, Patrick Mahomes is so great, Aaron Rodgers is just the off-schedule ability, right? They can create when nothing is there. What has it been like for you as a defensive coach in this league to watch us kind of go from an era where that wasn't that value to now where, if you're going to be an elite guy, you kind of better be able to make something happen outside of the pocket, right? Just what has that been like for you?
Oh, man. It's a challenge for a defensive coordinator. Defending those mobile quarterbacks, you're right on. I mean, when you have a mobile quarterback and you got what you think is the perfect call, you got a guy coming scot-free. But this quarterback is so elusive and athletic, and he just sidesteps him and makes a play, and you go like, oh, man, just it's hard. I mean, the mobile quarterbacks, they've changed our game, and that's another reason why these quarterbacks now are more effective against the blitz than they once were, because you can be right on what you're doing, but because of the athleticism, they're creating. And now those off-schedule plays that you mentioned, you don't really have an answer for that. It's just, it becomes backyard football, and you got to just scramble and scratch and try to make a play.
Thank you, Coach. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, Leslie, that's all for today, man.
All right, we'll see you.